on Twitter, I see a lot of people under Nigel Farage's tweets saying we can't help refugees because we've got homeless veterans, we can't help asylum seekers because we've got British homeless people. My question to you, Matt, is does Nigel Farage have the answer to the homeless crisis in Britain?
I don't think I've ever heard Nigel Farage come out with a housing policy. Nigel Farage is very good at telling a story about why Britain is the way it is that suits his own agenda, which is to protect capital, to protect vested interests in the establishment, and to direct the blame at migrants, at asylum seekers, at people without a voice. Of course we can help asylum seekers, of course we can help migrants, while also housing homeless people here. We have to just have a housing policy that's designed for those outcomes, and that means building more council houses. It's something that's been resisted by successive governments because they want to preserve the property sector, they want to preserve landlords charging extortionate rents. They know that that's their base that's going to vote for them in an election.
So from what you're saying, we can help both and we can house migrants.
Yes, we can do. It's incredible. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can do two things at once. It's a complete non sequitur that we can't help this group because we've got people experiencing problems in Britain. We should do both.
I find it quite interesting because Farage, he basically is a Thatcherite. He's a neoliberal. And whenever neoliberalism is in crisis, you always see immigration coming up. And I'm almost certain that the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, Farage are going to start whipping up more and more xenophobia as the unemployment crisis hits us. As socialists, how do we deal with that?
Well, I think we have to be propositional, and that means having our own answers to the problems that the country's facing and going to face. I don't think it's good enough for the Labour Party or for socialists to stand by and sort of scrutinise the government on its own terms, because the government will set the agenda, they will tell a story, a very coherent story, in the way that Nigel Farage does about why we're in the situation we're in. But that story won't be true. Invariably, because they want to protect the economic status quo, it will be because of the immigrants, or it will be because of people who can't speak up for themselves. They'll get the blame. And actually, as socialists, what we have to do is put forward an alternative that we can hopefully get as many people as possible behind. Things like universal basic income, these things should be discussed. Building more council housing should be discussed. We need to get these things on the agenda. And that means, being propositional and having our own solutions to the problems.
In terms of specific strategy, what should we be focusing on? Should we be going out in the streets protesting? Should we be promoting these policies on social media? How do we deal directly? How do we get people to start thinking about these solutions?
I think that socialists would be better off spending time organising outside of the Labour Party structures, as well as within the Labour Party if they want to remain members of the Labour Party. But I think the notion of single issue campaigns that you can build broad coalitions around using existing campaign structures that we have on the left that have been built up over the last 5 years with Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, I think we can absolutely make an impact, and we can start to put pressure on the government at constituency by constituency level. All of these things are grassroots campaigns can succeed, and I do think that is where the left is best focusing its energies, particularly in the next 5 years. And if we can get more people to join the Labour Party as a result of those community-based campaigns, then we're more likely to get a left-wing leader next time there's a leadership election.
With community-based campaigns, I heard that there are people who are now organising against evictions, and they're going to be standing up for tenants who could potentially become homeless. Now, obviously, Nigel Farage, he really cares about homeless people. Do you think he's going to be there with you protesting against these evictions?
I very much doubt it. I mean, this is the thing. In Britain, there is more land dedicated to golf courses than there are houses, homes that have been built. And Nigel Farage represents the golf course members. I'm not saying nothing against them, nothing against people that play golf, but his constituency are the people that play golf. They're older. They're usually landlords, pretty wealthy. Usually maybe baby boomers. These people are, this is the demographic that's actually benefiting from the scarcity of housing. And the scarcity of housing is a political choice. One of the big problems is it's not just the quantity, but it's the type of housing. And a lot of the housing is unaffordable, and the definition of affordable is well beyond the means of the average person. But it's going to require huge government intervention. We can't just keep tinkering around the edges and hoping that the private sector steps up and builds the houses that we need. It's just not happening. And it's not just about land. It's about the type of houses. It's about, some of the luxury apartments that are being built in London and sold to investors abroad and not occupied. All of these things. Homes effectively being used as investment vehicles, as money boxes for investors based out of the country. All of these things are a problem, and they're not anything to do with land. You can build new cities, you can build new towns. That's happening already. Ebbsfleet is a new town. Welwyn Garden City is a reasonably new town. All of these things are happening.
I sometimes feel that the Labour Party is a little bit scared of the Daily Mail, a little bit scared of the Daily Express. So the Daily Mail will whip up xenophobia, and the Labour Party will kind of be like, ooh, maybe they have legitimate concerns about immigration. Maybe there's people who have these legitimate concerns. What do you think? Do you think that's a good strategy to deal with Farage?
No, I think it's weak and cowardly, and I think it speaks to complete vacuity, just devoid of ideas. Because what Farage does is he's very good at this. He will tell a story and he'll provide a narrative about why things are the way they are. That's the Labour Party's job, to provide an alternative narrative and story. It doesn't put the blame on migrants. It doesn't put the blame on asylum seekers and people who can't speak up for themselves. The idea that we should acquiesce and accept the premise of the opponent's argument and narrative is a complete capitulation and just reinforces the idea that migrants are the problem and not the economic system. As a Labour Party and a socialist, we need to talk about the economic system. We need to talk about improving people's material conditions, policies that will improve people's lives, and shift the conversation away from those things.